Okay, so today we're diving into a topic that's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling.
Yeah, it's one of those things that most people don't really think about.
Exactly, and it involves something that a lot of people are turning to these days.
Yeah.
Bat guano fertilizer.
Right. It's become pretty popular, especially among those who, are into organic gardening and particularly in the cannabis industry.
And for good reason, right? I mean, bat guano is known for being packed with nutrients that are great for plant growth.
Oh, absolutely. It's like this natural superfood for plants.
But there's a catch, and that's what makes this topic a little unnerving.
Yeah, bat guano can also harbor a fungus called Histoplasma capsulatum.
And this fungus can cause a respiratory infection known as histoplasmosis.
And while it's not super common, histoplasmosis can be pretty serious, even fatal in some cases.
Yeah, and unfortunately, two recent cases have really brought this issue to light. Two men, both of whom were using bat guano to fertilize their cannabis plants, died after contracting histoplasmosis.
It's a tragic reminder that even natural products can have risks.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand those risks so we can take the necessary precautions.
For sure. So let's break down what happened in these cases. One of the men was 59 years old and had emphysema.
Okay, so already dealing with a respiratory condition.
Right. And he started experiencing all these health issues like weight loss, difficulty swallowing, even arthritis.
Wow, so a whole cascade of problems.
Yeah, and eventually he was hospitalized with respiratory failure.
And despite treatment for pneumonia and a bacterial infection, his condition just kept getting worse.
Sadly, he was put on a ventilator and passed away.
That's just awful.
It really is. Now, the other man also had some pre-existing health issues, a chronic cough, and a blood flow disorder.
So again, someone who might be more vulnerable to infections.
Exactly. And it's believed he was exposed to the fungus while checking out a pretty heavy bat infestation in his attic.
And I'm assuming he was planning to use that guano for his plants.
You got it. He was initially treated for suspected histoplasmosis and discharged, but then later readmitted with abdominal pain.
And sadly, he also passed away from complications related to reduced blood flow to his intestines.
It's a stark reminder that this fungus can have serious consequences.
Absolutely. So how do we balance the benefits of using bat guano with the need to protect public health? That seems to be the central question here.
You hit the nail on the head. It's not about demonizing bat guano, but about promoting awareness and understanding the risks.
Right. Knowledge is power. So if someone is considering using bat guano, what do they need to know to stay safe?
Well, first off, understanding that the risk of contracting histoplasmosis is higher when handling dry, disturbed guano. That's when the fungal spores are more easily dispersed into the air.
That makes sense. So if you're working with guano that's been sitting around for a while, extra precautions are needed.
Definitely. And it's also important to know that certain groups are more susceptible to severe infections.
Like those with weakened immune systems.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. So people with pre-existing health conditions, older adults, young children, they need to be extra cautious.
So while these cases are concerning, it's important to remember that histoplasmosis from bat guano is still considered relatively rare, right?
That's true. Statistics show that only 1 to 2 people per 100,000 are infected annually in the U.S.
Okay, so it's not like everyone who handles bat guano is going to get sick.
Right, but the increasing popularity of bat guano, especially in the cannabis industry, it does raise some concerns.
And with that increasing popularity, we need to be proactive about ensuring safety.
I completely agree. Some experts are even calling for mandatory testing of commercial biofertilizers that contain bat guano.
Testing for the presence of the histoplasm fungus, I presume.
Precisely. That way, consumers could be more confident about the safety of the product they're buying.
But wouldn't testing every batch be quite a logistical challenge?
It could be, yeah, and potentially costly, too. Which is why there's also discussion about stricter regulations for the handling and sale of bat guano, particularly online.
Because, as we saw in one of these cases, buying bat guano online might mean that consumers aren't getting all the information they need about the potential risks.
That's a valid concern. Clear information and safe handling practices are crucial, especially for people who are new to using bat guano.
So education and awareness are key here.
Absolutely. We need to empower people to make informed decisions about their health and safety.
So let's talk about some practical steps people can take to protect themselves when handling bat guano.
The most important thing is to wear protective gear, like masks and gloves.
It sounds like basic common sense, but it's easy to forget or skip these steps, especially when we're busy or distracted.
That's true. And it's worth noting that this isn't just about bat guano. Birds and their droppings can also carry the Histoplasma fungus.
So really, anytime we're handling animal manure, we should be taking precautions.
You got it. And if you're working in an area with a potential bat infestation, like an attic or a shed, disturbing those areas can stir up those fungal spores.
So a mask is a must in those situations.
Absolutely. And if anyone experiences any symptoms of histoplasmosis after potential exposure to bat guano, like fever, cough, chest pain, or fatigue, they should seek medical attention right away.
Early diagnosis and treatment can make a big difference.
Definitely. The sooner you catch it, the better the chances of a full recovery.
So the takeaway here is that while bat guano can be a great natural fertilizer, it's crucial to understand the risks and take the necessary precautions to protect yourself.
I couldn't agree more. It's all about weighing the benefits against the risks and making informed choices. So let's talk a bit about the whole regulatory side of this bat guano thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural product, but as we've seen, it's not without its risks. So how do we manage that?
Well, some folks are pushing for mandatory testing of all commercial bat guano fertilizer.
You mean like testing every batch that's sold to make sure it doesn't have the histoplasma fungus?
Exactly. That way, consumers would know they're getting a safe product.
I can see the logic there, but wouldn't that be super expensive and complicated? Testing every single batch.
Yeah, that's the main argument against it. Logistically, it could be a nightmare, and the costs could be really high, especially for smaller producers.
So what's the alternative?
Well, some people think we should focus more on risk mitigation strategies.
What does that look like in practice?
Education and awareness are huge. Making sure people understand the risks involved in handling bat guano and how to minimize those risks.
So things like wearing masks and gloves when you're working with the stuff.
Exactly. And clear labeling is really important too. Products containing bat guano should have clear warnings about the potential for histoplasmosis and instructions for safe handling.
It seems like online retailers would have a big role to play in this too.
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to buy bat guano online these days, and people might not be getting all the information they need about the risks.
So maybe there need to be some regulations about what kind of information online retailers have to provide.
That's one idea that's been floated. But public awareness campaigns are also really important. We need to make sure both home gardeners and commercial growers are aware of the risks associated with bat guano.
And what those risks are and how to protect themselves.
Right, and that includes recognizing the symptoms of histoplasmosis so they can seek medical attention if needed.
It's always better to be safe than sorry.
No doubt about it. And it's worth mentioning that not all bat guano is created equal. The risk of histoplasmosis can vary depending on the type of bat, where the guano came from, and how it was processed and stored.
So there's a lot of nuance to it.
There is, and that's why informed decision-making is so important.
It's about understanding the benefits and the risks and making choices that are right for you.
And realizing that even though something is natural, it doesn't mean it's completely harmless.
Nature can be powerful, and we need to respect that power. So we've been talking a lot about bat guano in the context of gardening.
Yeah, but it's important to remember that people might encounter it in other places too.
Like think about caves, attics, old buildings, places where bats might hang out.
Exactly, and if you're in one of those places and you disturb some bat guano, well, that could stir up those fungal spores.
And that's not something you want to be breathing in.
Definitely not. So if you have to be in an area where there's bat guano, make sure you wear a mask.
A good mask that can filter out those tiny particles.
Right, and try not to disturb the guano any more than you absolutely have to.
What about if you need to clean up bat guano? Is that something you should even try to do yourself?
Honestly, if you've got a significant amount of bat guano to clean up, it's best to call in the pros.
People who are trained in how to handle it safely.
Exactly. They have the right equipment and they know how to do it without putting themselves or anyone else at risk.
So those two cases we talked about earlier, the men who died from histoplasmosis.
It's just a tragic reminder that even natural products can be dangerous if they're not handled properly.
And that we need to be aware of the risks and take precautions.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance between the benefits of using natural products and protecting our health.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from the benefits of bat guano as a fertilizer to the risks associated with the histoplasma fungus.
And the importance of awareness, education, and responsible use. So, to wrap things up, I think the key takeaway here is that knowledge is power.
I couldn't agree more. The more we understand about the natural world, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions that protect our health and well-being.
And to appreciate the amazing complexity of nature, even in its sometimes unsettling forms.